What was a time you had a gut feeling about something, ignored it, then ended up being right about it in the end? Gonna try to make this story as brief as possible. Late one night, I was riding my bike on the sidewalk, coming home with groceries. I saw this dude standing between the street and the sidewalk up ahead and felt sketched out. I thought about going into the street instead of past him, but there was no driveway or anything, so I just kept going forward. Bad call. That guy and 2 of his friends mugged me, and I had to have emergency eye surgery that night. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. We found an injured cat in the middle of a bridge in the city and took her to a vet. She had extensive injuries, probably from having been under the hood of a car as it was started. She needed to have basically all the skin around her tail and back legs removed. The vet offered to take her off our hands, but we were worried she'd be euthanized, so we paid for the surgery. She seemed to be recovering well for a couple weeks and was such a sweet cat, very quickly took to following us around the house. But I started to notice that she wasn't defecating or eating, so I took her to the vet. I'd been worried that her wound was healing her anus shut, but I didn't want to try to tell the vet how to do her job, and she didn't come to the conclusion on her own. She gave us pain meds and we left. The next day the cat started suffering quite a lot, and we rushed her to the ER. She'd in fact not been able to pass stool. She was also severely hydrated, but the vet tech mistriaged her, and by the time they saw us the surgeon on hand had left. We weren't given any choice but to euthanize. I will never hesitate to tell somebody how to do their job again. She could still be with us. She deserved to still be with us. I had a feeling one of my immediate family members was going to die. My parents rented a beach house for their 33rd anniversary in October 2021, and since I lived close by I met them there for a mini family vacation. The last night of the trip, all of us were hanging out in the living room watching TV after eating dinner, and I got the overwhelming sense that this would be the last time my life would ever be truly perfect. I was in my favorite place, staying in my favorite beach house that my parents had been renting since I was 4. Both of my parents were healthy and well, sitting on the couch beside me, and both of my dogs were snuggled up to my side. The feeling was so strong that I even took out my phone and took a video panning the room. I had a feeling this would be a moment I would never want to forget. The next day I hugged my parents goodbye after packing the car and told them how much I loved them, and that I would see them when I would be home for the holidays. My mom passed away instantly the morning of December 18th from what they believe was a brain aneurysm. She was completely healthy with no prior conditions, and had no symptoms before it happened to alert her that anything was wrong. I had gone to bed early the night prior, and when I woke up I had 2 text messages: a goodnight text from my mom sent after I had fallen asleep at 10:04 p.m. telling me how much she loved me, and another from my dad at 7 a.m. saying, "Call me now, it's very important." Half of me died that day with her. My friend had a boyfriend who just gave me bad vibes when we talked on the phone. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something about him rubbed me the wrong way. Then about a year into their relationship he says we can't see each other. After she asked me to come hang out with her and her friends, I told her I didn't feel comfortable meeting him, so I never did. He ended up murdering her. I woke up after spending the night at my friend's house and had a gut feeling that he had died. I ignored it for hours waiting for him to wake up. Finally went in his room and found him dead. When I was around 14 I had met this guy online, and it was so cool because he lived in my area and he just turned 15. After a couple months of talking, and him displaying a million red flags that I was too naive to see, I finally gave in to him begging me to meet up. He was cute and kept extremely active/fit, and I really had to talk myself into it. On my walk to meet him every cell in my body was screaming at me not to go, but I pushed past all of it. He was actually like 30 years old, at least 350 pounds, and was super greasy/unwashed/stinky. I had no idea it was even him. I just walked right past him and then he called my name. I was instantly so scared. We talked for a few minutes and he kept telling me I have to kiss him because I made him wait months for this. He kept looking at a car driving by repeatedly and said it was his mom checking in on him. It was winter time and he joked about how stupid I was that I walked there because he can just follow my footprints back to my house. He laughed and called me things like his silly little biatch. This whole interaction lasted like 20 minutes before I finally got the courage to tell him I was leaving. And I didn't kiss him, but I did let him hug me, which of course was also a mistake. He dove his face deep into my neck, smelling me and rubbing his hands all over my body. And when he let me push him off, I just said okay bye and left. I made sure I walked the opposite direction of my house and away from him and walked around for nearly 3 hours before going home, a 5 minutes walk from where we met, but I told him it was much further. He still managed to stalk me for a few years and I was too scared to tell anyone because I thought it was my fault. My husband has a lot of health problems. Insomnia is regular occurrence. One night he couldn't sleep. He couldn't get comfortable, had nausea, he had pain. These weren't uncommon symptoms for him, but it seemed a little worse than usual. I knew that heart attack symptoms can be subtle and often are mistaken for heartburn or stomach upset. I told him this and suggested we go to the hospital to play it safe. He said no. Months later he had some testing done and we learned that he'd had a silent heart attack. They couldn't give us a date, but the time frame matched up with that night he couldn't sleep. I should have put my foot down and made him go to the hospital. If you're reading this, learn the symptoms of a heart attack and of a stroke. Anytime you're concerned about the possibility of a heart attack or stroke, get it checked out by a healthcare professional. When I was a teenager, I was riding in the car with some friends. The driver was speeding a little and acting like an idiot in general. We stopped so he could switch out a CD. This was in the 90s. I had a bad feeling he was going to eventually wreck the car and someone would die or get hurt badly. I almost got out of the car. I didn't though. We did end up wrecking less than 20 minutes later. I came close to severing an artery in my neck when we crashed. Everyone else's injuries were fairly minor, including the driver. His reckless actions caused the accident. I wish I would have trusted my gut instinct. My neighbor, who didn't leave much, always parked his car in the same spot, right in view of my bedroom window. A snowstorm was going all week and on day 4 of the storm I was sitting in bed watching TV. Looked out and saw his car had not moved all week. The snow was piled up and the drifts were pristine. Got that icky feeling but figured I was being paranoid. Woke up in the middle of the night to his body being carried out by EMTs. His kidneys had failed and he was incapable of seeking help in his last few days. Stuck in his house alone. Still makes me sick thinking about it. Another story was my mother-in-law. I'm going to preface this with the fact that I watched quite a few of my family members pass when I was age 10 and younger. I became almost numb to the idea and instead focused on the intricacies of their conditions. After all, there isn't much for a kid to do sitting in a room with a person waiting to expire. There is a smell that always stuck with me when they were close to death. Almost like a sweet rotten smell. Back to the story, one day she was talking to me and the smell hit me like a ton of bricks. A few weeks later she was diagnosed with stage 3 mouth cancer. When I was a kid, my mom and I were going to a friend's house for a play date. I did not want to leave the house. I wanted to bring my favorite things, because I knew they weren't safe at home. She wouldn't let me. We went to the play date, and when we came home the entire house was on fire. We lost 99% of our stuff. I was visiting family in California, LA area. I was walking home from a newly opened thrift store near my grandparents' house. At that time I was with my older sister who a week or two prior had my second nephew. I started to get the feeling that at some point we were going to get hit by something. I wasn't exactly sure what, but I had that feeling. I kept pushing it off since around that area and especially at that time, there may have been maybe 5 cars going down both ways of the street. We were just about to round a corner to get back onto the street by my grandparents, when I felt like I honestly needed to puke from how bad of a feeling I got. I ended up pushing my sister and my nephews away towards the wall of the house on the corner, and almost immediately I got clipped by a car that had gotten T-boned while speeding. Luckily my nephews and my sister were alright, but I needed surgery on my leg and a portion of my hip. Not me but my nan. My nan always had this weird sixth sense about things. She always knew when someone was pregnant, she knew when her kids skipped school, when they'd snuck a treat, the best day to go to bingo etc. She went through cancer twice in 5 years, and she had just finished her final round of chemo when she knew something was wrong. For 3 weeks she kept going back to the doctor telling them that something was wrong but they couldn't find anything. They told her it was just her body reacting to the chemo and her age and she'd be okay in a week or 2. She was always the happiest person I knew, but the month before her death she changed a bit. She scared the hell out of my mom multiple nights when she'd call her in tears saying she knew she was going to die soon. I would call her at least once a fortnight to catch up, but she started calling more regularly. The last time we spoke, she said how proud she was that someone in the family was finally starting to sew. She used to be a seamstress and even made her wedding dress, but no one else had any interest until me. She also rarely would say I love you, but she ended the call saying how proud she was of me, how much she loved my daughter and me, and my unborn baby, and how this would be the baby to stick after 3 losses. On the Monday, the hospital did a chest x-ray and it came up clear. Despite a 2-week-long fever that wouldn't go away, they sent her home. Wednesday my mom had to call an ambulance because she was panicking and the fever was really high, and she said her chest hurt. Thursday as my mum drove me home from an ultrasound appointment, my uncle called to say they did another x-ray and it was pneumonia. 3:30 a.m. Friday morning, my nan was begging her nurses to call for my mum. She needed her there. It couldn't be anyone else, it couldn't wait. Nothing would settle her for hours, so they called and mum went. By noon she was losing her ability to speak. By 4:30 p.m. she was gone, holding my mum and her sister's hand as my mum had tiptoe through the tulips playing for her. When we cleaned out her house, she had 4 bunches of fake tulips and a note for each of her children, written just weeks beforehand when she first started saying she was going to die soon. When I was 5 years old, I was at my grandpa's house to see my uncle off as he was going on a road trip. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was running down my grandpa's hallway when a thought made me freeze with fear. He's not coming back. I was 5, so I didn't understand the concept of death. I just knew that if he left I would never see him again. I cried and cried when it came time to say goodbye but said nothing about it. My uncle promised when he came home he'd take me and my brothers to McDonald's in an attempt to cheer me up. Then I watched him drive away in his blue van. I never did see him again. That night his wrecked van was found around 3 a.m. No one can say for sure what happened. There was no indications of him braking, no apparent medical episode, and no drugs/alcohol found in his system. The best explanation we have is that he fell asleep at the wheel, veered off the road, went down a hill and hit a tree. I highly recommend everyone to read or listen to The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. He goes into great detail about why we have gut feelings and how oftentimes we are picking up on things we aren't totally aware of. It's a fantastic book that makes you have a better appreciation for those gut feelings.